Going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare right here on our FTN Network YouTube page live. Chris Meaney here with you, also on Game Plus Network. It is Thursday, which means it is March Madness all getting underway here today. If you're watching live on our FTN Network YouTube page, is just getting underway. Actually, like 10 minutes ago. If you're watching on Game Plus Network, maybe a couple of games have already gotten underway, but we do appreciate you. We have really dove into the college basketball at length on this show over the past couple of days. Still a ton of content going to come your way on our FTN Network YouTube page. The guys are going to be with you, Kutri and Walt and Randall, through the entire tournament. I am not going to be here on Friday or Monday. I am taking part. Well, I'm not actually. I'm not part of Jake's wedding at all. I'm just there for support, moral support. I'm going to hang by and watch my guy get married, tie the knot. I'm excited for him. Yesterday, we did talk a little fantasy football on All In Football. Of course, you can catch it on Game Plus Network as well. We dove into a lot of the free agent stuff, but today I'm going to talk about some of the moves through free agency. We've seen some running backs now signed, some wide receivers, a couple tight ends movement as well, defensive players, offensive players. How about the Darius Slay drama? My goodness, it's crazy, right? 1 minute it sounds like he's released. Then it sounded like he was on his way to the Baltimore Ravens. And then now it sounds like he's back in Philly like he never left. So it's really hard to keep up. But it was interesting to me late last night, not actually seeing the official release. Like 4 p.m. was like the start of the new season, and not seeing the official release last night. I thought it was strange. And then, a lot of these athletes these days are really taking to social media. And Darius Slay's not shy about his, social media presence. It's on point. And it was Marlon Humphreys, cornerback for the Baltimore Ravens, had tweeted a bunch of eye emojis and said it was going to be a good day. I originally thought that meant maybe Lamar Jackson, maybe, I don't know, maybe some Lamar Jackson news. And then Darius Slay retweeted that. So I was like, oh no, this guy's going to Baltimore. Oh my goodness, what a great get for the Ravens. That defense already has a lot of really nice players on it. And then reportedly that deal fell through. And again, just reports. I'm not a guy that's breaking news, but I have heard through the grapevine that there was a deal in place. The Ravens wanted Darius Slay, but they didn't want to ante up and trade for Darius Slay. So Howie Roseman had all the leverage really in this spot. I mean, he's still under contract. They didn't want to get rid of him. Reports that they were going to release him and he was just going to sign, not for free, but really go sign with Baltimore, with Philly getting no assets. And Howie said, no, that's not going to happen. We'll restructure the deal. And it does sound like maybe a 3-year deal for Darius Slay. So those two, the other Bradbury back together. Miles Sanders no longer a member of the Eagles. Eagles have lost a lot of players, but they have brought back some of the core. Slay not leaving, Bradbury returning. What does it mean for CJ Gardner-Johnson? We'll see what happens with him if they can find a deal for CJ. And they brought Fletcher Cox back on the cheap. So the core is still there defensively, but there are some moving pieces across the league. And the Bengals have themselves as an offensive lineman. I thought that was a really good get, a must get for the Cincinnati Bengals via the draft or through free agency. We'll talk about all the moves here. I'm going to stop with the college basketball for today. Wanted to give Kutri and Walt and Randall a bit of a break. These guys have been grinding over the past couple of days. Hopefully everybody enjoys the March Madness tournament. As I said, won't be here the next couple of days, but we'll dive back into it when we get deeper into the tournament. I will resume on Thursday. I wanted to talk some World Baseball Classic with you guys too. I kind of dropped the ball on that. I wanted to show you guys the next matchup. So I think Japan won pretty easily this morning in their quarterfinal matchup, but really highly entertaining, on the edge of your seat if you're a fan of Team USA yesterday, beating Colombia 3-2. How about my guy Mike Trout, right? We haven't been able to see him on the big stage since 2014. It's the only time he's made the playoffs with the Halos. He played 3 games, and they lost all 3 of them. 2014 seems like a long time ago. The Angels were actually really good in 2014. They led baseball in hits and runs, and they're electric, and they got bounced by the Royals in the first round, swept by Kansas City. But Trout last night came up clutch. He had a 2 RBI single. He had an RBI, another RBI single. He drove in all 3 runs for Team USA. He had a triple as well. He's been fantastic here throughout. the World Baseball Classic. And how about the Dominican Republic just straight up done like that? Venezuela 4-0. And I think that's who Team USA is going to play. It's going to be really, really tough, but never thought I'd see, like, it was, it was a tough division, right? In Puerto Rico, it's got some nice players as well and beat Dominican Republic yesterday, but just an absolutely loaded lineup that couldn't get it done. Julio Rodriguez, I love the guy. I saw baseball tweet out the best players on every team in every country, and they had Julio Rodriguez as the best guy. And there's a lot of really good guys on that squad. He had a costly error last night in center field, inside the park home run for Francisco Lindor. It was just like a routine play into center. He not that he would catch it. It was going to hit the ground first, but it went under his glove all the way back to the wall, and Lindor rounds the bases. And I think Edwin Diaz suffered, I don't think it's a significant injury, although I haven't heard details on it, but he did suffer a knee injury yesterday celebrating with the squad. Those celebrations can kill you. I think of Kendrys Morales with the Angels when he had a grand slam. I think he had a grand slam walk-off home run, and the way he jumped on the plate, he broke both ankles. He fractured both ankles. There's been a lot of celebrations. There's been a couple football celebrations as well. I can't remember the names, but guys celebrating, blowing out, a knee or ripping an Achilles just over like some celebrations, crazy stuff. Be careful when you selly. Dangle, bet, and selly. Hard. Okay. NHL, 11 games on the ice. I got some picks, some point props, really find some value. I found some value anyways. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been finding some value on point props. Like, a lot of guys are juiced. Like, can we get behind a -220 point for Artemi Panarin? No, we can't. But how about Tarasenko near even money playing with Artemi Panarin? So we're going to talk about a couple players in good situations, on top lines, top power plays, in good spots tonight that have some pretty good value when it comes to point props. We've been riding Nino Ryder. We've been riding Andrei Kuzmenko as well. Andrei Kuzmenko. There's been a few players in the NHL which we've been riding, and we'll talk about them in just a little bit. But a heavy fantasy football show here today, mixing with some NHL and an NBA prop or two, and may dive into the college basketball, look at some later matchups for the crew over at Game Plus Network here, presented by So Rare. This is Mean Streets. We'll be back in a couple. Hang tight. Welcome back in. All right. Since everybody's watching the madness, they can take some time to come check out Mean Streets a little bit later on and break down some of the movement in the NFL, free agency. And we really are seeing some movement. We'll talk about some defensive players and the important offensive players and what it means from an NFL perspective. But I do want to talk about some of the skilled players and kind of tie in fantasy and maybe dynasty and just, with all of it, right? We'll start here with some running backs. I'm not going to really bring the numbers at you guys, but just wanted to just show that some of these players have changed places. So Miles Sanders here with the Carolina Panthers, David Montgomery with moves from Chicago to Detroit. So that's my bad. I probably did that wrong for George. David Montgomery is a member of the Detroit Lions. Jamaal Williams, not a member of the Detroit Lions anymore. He's a member of the New Orleans Saints. Rashaad Penny's in Philadelphia. Samaje Perine in Denver. Travis Homer with Chicago, and James Robinson in New England. So there's still a few running backs that are out there. There's a couple that have re-signed with their teams. Of course, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard. These guys had the franchise tag 10.9. It's like basically 10.1 million, what they'll earn this season. Carolina, I believe with Miles Sanders, it's a 4-year deal. Montgomery is a 3-year deal, 18 million. Singletary is still out there. Deontay Foreman, Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris, Jerick McKinnon still out there. The Miami Dolphins decided to re-sign Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert. Jeff Wilson, 2 years, 8.2. Raheem Mostert, 2 years, 5.6. So they keep those two together. Very familiar with the Kyle Shanahan / Mike McDaniel's, playbook and offensive scheme. And that's what we saw, right? We saw when McDaniel moved over to Miami from San Fran with Shanahan, and he's been with Shanahan really his whole career in multiple different spots. It was a very similar scheme, a lot of guys in motion utilizing these running backs. So he brought in he brought in Raheem Mostert, kind of used him the same ways as he was used in San Fran. And then they traded for Jeff Wilson. And they also, that was last year, and then they decided to bring him back. And they also brought back Myles Gaskin as well. So the whole band is back together there in Miami. I wanted to see like a Kareem Hunt, or I thought maybe a Miles Sanders would do good there. We'll talk about, the value and what it means for these guys in just a minute. Other like re-signing guys, like Craig Reynolds, low-key, re-signs with Detroit. Mike Boone goes to Houston. Matt Breida re-signs with the New York Giants. Also had Justice Hill re-signed with Baltimore, and Alexander Mattison re-signed with Minnesota, 2 years, $7 million. So interesting about Mattison, right? Because he's a guy that I think could handle full workload. I'd like to see him. We've seen like small spurts of Alexander Mattison when Dalvin Cook's been injured, and Dalvin Cook, dealing with some stuff in the offseason. So maybe that's part of the reason they wanted to bring him back. Mattison is a nice back. I think he's one of the better backup running backs in the league. And we saw a little bit more run from him in years past. Before the new coaching staff came in Minnesota, it was really just a whole lot of Dalvin Cook. When Dalvin Cook was healthy, he was getting all the touches. But I noticed this year, there were some moments where they would ease off the tension from Dalvin Cook and a couple drives here and there for Alexander Mattison, getting him a couple red zone touches and whatnot. It is a really good 1-2 punch. And Mattison, we're never really going to see the full potential for him. I thought maybe a team like Miami also, somebody else would bring him in and maybe he would, fight for the lead, or like maybe 55% or 60%, but his true upside is capped as long as, he's a Viking, and he is a Viking with Dalvin Cook. So he's always just going to be a handcuff. He's always just going to be a pick in the middle to late rounds of your draft. And you're just like, he's never going to want to start this guy unless Dalvin Cook is sidelined. And I'm not a big believer in handcuffs in fantasy football. I feel like it's just a wasted pick, especially when it's that early. Like if you are handcuffing a true bell cow back, in years past with, Saquon Barkley, he comes to mind. Is Matt Breida a good handcuff? No, but it's towards the end of the draft. If anything happened to Saquon, Breida shows up, but there's going to be multiple different backs. But Madison's like an expensive handcuff. And at that point of your draft, I'm not sure where the ADP is going to fall, but I would imagine Madison's like a 12 to 14 round pick. I'd rather just take a shot on, a rookie running back or a rookie wide receiver or somebody else that's just kind of getting disrespected in fantasy land, or maybe draft a quarterback at that point. If you don't feel like you want to be aggressive on the first few guys, it just always feels like a wasted pick to me, getting that handcuff. Draft somebody else's handcuff. Right. And then if that injury happens, all of a sudden you got a couple different starters. If Cook goes down, great, you got Madison, but Cook went down. That's usually the way that I attack handcuffs. And people always talk about handcuffs. If you're going to do it, get cheap handcuffs. Who was a really good handcuff last year? Jamaal Williams. Jamaal Williams, actually, we drafted him on this show. We did a best ball draft over at NFBC last year, and I took him in round 26. Now, I wish I had more shares of Jamaal Williams because he was a league winner. He really was. 1,000 yards, 17 rushing touchdowns. He had a really good season for the Detroit Lions. He led the NFL in red zone rushing attempts by far. He was a beast inside the red zone. And maybe he wasn't that efficient, and he kind of cooled off towards the end of the season, but he had a really good year. And that's just a perfect example of DeAndre Swift, who was going in the late first, early second, has never played a full season in the NFL, drafting a handcuff like Jamaal Williams, and that worked out for a lot of people out there. And if he wasn't drafted in your league, he was a waiver wire winner for a lot of people. Now he goes to New Orleans. It's going to be a split backfield with Alvin Kamara. It's a good offensive line in New Orleans. It's a good defense. A new quarterback at the helm under center in Derek Carr. Michael Thomas restructured his contract. We also have a great young wide receiver in Chris Olave as well. So there's a lot of nice pieces there. The defense was a top 10 defense last year. I really like this Saints team and the direction they're going. You guys know I'm a Carr fan. I may not like Carr as much as a lot of people out there, but I think maybe last year, an outlier in terms of the interceptions. The year before, maybe an outlier in terms of the passing yards. He flirted with 5,000. He didn't really throw to a lot of great wide receivers, but he is a good quarterback. If he can limit the mistakes, he's not going to be asked to chuck as much as he did with the Raiders. The defense is much better, right? He's never had himself a top 15 defense ever, right? The defenses in Las Vegas and back in Oakland have been pathetic for as long as I can remember. They're just awful. They haven't been able to nail any draft picks. They've just really butchered a lot of drafts over the last few years, cutting former first-round picks left, right, and center. I really like what the Saints have going on here. Maybe Jamaal Williams is overdrafted slightly, but we'll wait on Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, I think, may get a suspension. He may miss a couple games this season. Could be as many as 4, maybe 6. We'll see what happens there. Jamaal Williams could have that backfield to himself a little bit, but he's not going to lead the NFL in red zone touches again, or red zone rushing attempts. This is not. When you have a guy like Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill to the backfield, it's just not going to happen. And I hopefully, Taysom Hill doesn't get in there and steal all these red zone touches that should go to Alvin Kamara. Kamara is dynamic. Jamaal Williams is a really good goal line back. This isn't great news for Alvin Kamara, but again, last year wasn't a good season for Alvin Kamara, and he was getting a lot of those red zone touches taken from him, from a guy like Taysom Hill. This offense will probably roll a little bit different this year. I'd say it could be split between, Kamara and Williams getting the red zone touches. I think it's very important to have a guy like Alvin Kamara on the field, passing down situations as well. Very dynamic, explosive. The agility is off the charts when it comes to Kamara. But Jamaal Williams is a really good goal line back, and he is going to get some touches there inside that offense. Dave Montgomery over to Detroit. Again, DeAndre Swift has never had a full season on his resume. I really like this get. Dave Montgomery, a lot of hype, I think, myself too, if you've been following my work for the past few years, I really liked him at the time that I was with The Athletic. I had him as a top 12 running back in his rookie season, and he was very disappointing, but he was among the leaders in forced tackles missed last year. He is a really strong running back. He can catch balls out of the backfield, which is kind of an underrated part of his game. Now, Swift is there as well and is a really good pass catcher, but DeAndre Swift, could see how they used him last year. They used Jamaal Williams as the goal line back. Montgomery should be used as the goal line back in Detroit. He goes to a team which has a much better offensive line in Detroit. I think this is a really good 1-2 punch. It's not going to be ideal for fantasy. I think I would rather have Montgomery. I think people will probably tell you that Swift has the higher ceiling because of what he can do through the air. But injuries are concerning for me. It's a thing that we have to talk about, especially in fantasy. Both of these guys will probably go around the same price. I'd say like a low end RB2 for Montgomery, and Swift will probably live in that range as well. And, I'm seeing people on Twitter talk about buying low on DeAndre Swift. Check in if you want, but I would rather have a draft pick. I would rather move DeAndre Swift. If there's somebody in your league that really wants DeAndre Swift and they want to buy low on DeAndre Swift, go ahead and sell DeAndre Swift. We may not actually see the true upside of DeAndre Swift until he is gone. Maybe he is just gone from the Lions in a couple of years and he's on a new team and he's treated differently. But I think if you're the Lions, you got a great 1-2 punch here. I think you got to, space it out just a little bit, right? Ease off the tension of DeAndre Swift, have Montgomery be the workhorse, switch these guys out in and out like they did with Jamaal Williams and company. But think about Montgomery and the goal line work that he could get in Detroit, right? It's a great team. It's an upcoming team. They got some players on defense. Jared Goff was great last season. The home and away splits certainly something to monitor again this season. He wasn't that good on the road, but you bring in Jameson Williams, who will be healthy with the squad, played a handful of games. You saw the explosiveness in just a very small sample size. You saw the explosiveness. It reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson, and, in Bama, a lot of, 40-yard touchdowns, and that's what Deshaun has done. Big playability. Him and Amon-Ra there. It's a really nice 1-2 punch with the wide receiver core and then the running back core as well. But if I told you David Montgomery is going to lead the NFL in red zone rushing attempts like Jamaal Williams did, or he's going to be top 5, I think you'd be pretty excited about his upside. What does it mean for Khalil Herbert? I think a lot. I think Khalil Herbert showed us he was one of our sleepers heading into last year. Now, we didn't get that right. It was as a guy that I thought was certainly worth, a 12 or 14th round pick. And at times it was good. For sure. When Montgomery missed a little bit of time, we saw what he could do. It's been 2 years in a row where Montgomery's missed some time and Khalil Herbert's had some massive games. 20 for 157. I know it was against the Texans, but he did eat up the Texans last year. 18 for 100, 16 for 99, 16 for 97, 19 for 77, 18 for 75. You can go back and look at all the games where he's had at least 16 touches. This guy is getting around 70 yards and catch the ball out of the backfield. And bringing in Travis Homer doesn't really put a damper on Khalil Herbert's upside. Homer's not going to be stealing any first or second down opportunities from him. He's going to be a third down running back and catch some balls out of the backfield. Khalil Herbert, if I'm going to give a knock on him, it would be the pass blocking for sure. I don't think he's that great of a pass blocker. I think he can learn. Let's see what else the Bears do. The Bears have been very active, of course, trading out of the first pick, getting Tremaine Edmonds, getting TJ Edwards. They're beefing up the defense here, and they still have a lot of cap space. And what they could do at pick 9 is maybe get an offensive tackle with that pick. I think that may be the way that they're going to go. And Chicago's really on the rise here. I really like what the Bears are doing. When you have a mobile quarterback like Justin Fields, it can open up some avenues for running backs. And I think Herbert is a better running back than David Montgomery. I think he's a little bit more explosive than Montgomery. I think he hits the hole better. I think he can get to the edge quicker. I'm a big fan of his, and that's why he was a big sleeper for me heading into this past season. And that's why I've been talking about him at length as like a great buy low candidate, thinking to myself that Montgomery would be gone. Now, of course, it's always a risk. You acquire Khalil Herbert, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, they brought back Montgomery. This is a waste. And it still could be a waste. Last year we were excited about Michael Carter as well with the Jets, and then they drafted Breece Hall. So Chicago could decide that they want to draft a running back. They have a couple picks, right? I think they got 3 or so inside the first maybe 66 picks roughly. Definitely 2. They could draft a running back. It's very possible they go that route, but I think they like what they see in Herbert, and it was very telling towards the end of last season as well. There's a few games here. I think I got his game log brought up. I mean, it really doesn't matter, but I'd like to show you guys some stats so that I'm not just talking out of my rear here. Like 20 for a $157 is just, that was the game against the Texans. He got 2 passes. He was getting some red zone play towards the end of the season as well. 10 for 50, a couple red zone touches in there. He only had 4 touchdowns overall, but there was a game, I think early in the year. Yeah. Against San Fran, he had the touchdown in week 1. It was a sloppy game, but there was also a game against the Giants. That's right. It's 19 for 77. I do believe Montgomery played in that game. And towards the end of the game, when the game was tight, it was on the line. I saw Khalil Herbert there in some red zone packages. So I believe they like this guy. Now, he's been a great buy low. Hopefully you bought him. If you're in a dynasty league near the end, you could have sold him off for some assets or sold pieces off for some assets. And maybe that asset was getting Khalil Herbert. I'm buying low on him. I own him in a dynasty league and I'm pretty excited. But now I will make him available just to see, right? It's like a stock market, high and low, right? It's low. Nobody really wants him. Nobody's thinking about him. All of a sudden now it's potentially his backfield and what is an exciting improved offense with DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet. There's some weapons there in Chicago, and Fields looks like a player. And again, he can improve as a passer. We've seen this before when other weapons were brought in. AJ Brown in Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts improved, Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, Cole Beasley, Buffalo improved as well. It is all about coaching. I'd like to see them they don't have an offensive minded coach there, but I still believe that there's room to grow here. And I think we're going to see the growth from Justin Fields. There's no doubt in my mind he's a top 5 quarterback. He's a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I would go whatever you want to do. Allen, Hurts had more fantasy points per game than Allen, but Allen's been pretty consistent over the last 3 years. Allen, it would be Allen, Hurts, and Mahomes for me, and then Burrow, and then I'm right there with Fields, and I think Trevor Lawrence is right there. Team Trevor Lawrence over Herbert. We'll see what happens to Lamar Jackson, but certainly he's in the conversation for a top 5 quarterback, no question, when you bring in a guy like DJ Moore too and the rushing upside that he has. Anyways, Herbert, if you do own him, maybe make him available, see what you can get. People will sometimes overpay, and if they do draft a guy, you'd be like, okay, maybe it's not the end of the world. As for Rashaad Penny, 1 year, 1.35 million. I think it's a max of 2. They also brought back, say that 5 times fast. I can't even say it at all. They also brought back Boston Scott, and they have Kenneth Gainwell. This is how you pay a running back room. 5 million combined for those 3 guys. They also may draft a guy. Rashaad Penny, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry is the best mark in the NFL over the last 2 years. Now, the problem is he's only played 15 games over the last 2 years. He's a former first-round pick, the Seattle Seahawks. He was an absolute league winner 2 years ago. Towards the end of the season, he was the best running back in football over the last 4 or 5 weeks. He was phenomenal. And they didn't pick up the option on him. They could have picked up the option, had him cheap. They decided to bring him back for 1 more year. Now he's gone. I think it's a really good get for the Eagles. I'm not going to get as excited as everybody else in the fantasy community. And there's a lot of people that I respect. I'm not going to take any shots at them. Not even going to bring them up. But a lot of people are talking about him being like a first round, not drafting in the first round, but like returning the type of value to be an RB1, a low end RB1. That's all fine and dandy. But as I said with Jake, the screen's shaking here. As I said with Jake, if you're playing franchise mode with the Eagles and you have your setting turned off, he may be an absolute baller for you this season. He is explosive. He is great between the tackles. He has been, as I mentioned, among the leaders in not just yards per carry, yards after contact. Miles Sanders was among the leaders in red zone rushing attempts last year. We all view Jalen Hurts as a guy who could, he almost led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. Jamaal Williams, obviously 17, but Hurts was right there, missed a couple games. He is the guy when they get near the goal line, the 1 or the 2, even if they get rid of the sneak and the way that the Eagles ran the sneak and basically like a rugby sneak there. But even if they get rid of that, Hurts will still be a monster on the ground. But ultimately, if he could stay healthy, Penny will be that goal line back for Philadelphia. It won't be Boston Scott. It won't be Kenneth Gainwell. I think we'll see a full-on committee. I think people will reach with Penny, knowing the upside, the offensive line that he plays behind, if he can stay healthy. There's always that if, right? There's that appealing touch and aspect to it that people will be willing to reach on him. I think maybe in a best ball format, that's a case that you could definitely reach on him. An underdog, you reach for those players that could win you weeks alone. And it is a good situation. But I think Philly will use all of these running backs. Maybe they draft a guy. Maybe just like he's more suited for maybe 8 to 10 touches, right? Let's use all of these guys. And that's not a great situation for fantasy. We'll see what happens there. Was there anybody else on that list that I didn't touch on, Quan? I know I kind of rambled on here for about 15 minutes here in the second block. Did I hit up on everyone? So Pirine is a great pass catcher. He's a great pass blocker. We've seen him have a really big role, an underrated role actually with the Bengals over the past couple of seasons. And I believe Javonte Williams' injury is a lot more significant than I think the Denver Broncos are letting on. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go week 1. Not that I'm saying to draft Penny, but he's a nice back to bring in, a veteran presence there, a pass catching running back. I'm a huge fan of Javonte Williams. I think he's fantastic. And we really saw it towards, he only played a handful of games with Russ and company. And Nathaniel Hackett was absolutely clueless. Peyton's going to be able to bring this offense to where it needs to be. But Pirine, maybe he's there as a third down pass catcher. Maybe he gets more run in the first couple weeks. Travis Homer, as I mentioned earlier, just a pass catching running back brought in. And James Robinson signs with New England. I'm a big fan of Ramondre Stevenson. I think it could be a 3-down back. I'm going to have him ranked as a top 12 running back this year. Damian Harris is a free agent. I don't think Robinson really cuts in too much, but he could, kind of spell him from time to time. Maybe he averages like 5 to 8 touches is just, I think, a good real life signing. But from a fantasy standpoint, I don't think we need to really be worried about Ramondre Stevenson. As for Miles Sanders, he's on a bad team for one, Carolina. They're going to have the first overall pick. They got the first overall pick. They're going to bring themselves in a quarterback, and the defense has a lot of holes. But Miles Sanders, say what you want about Sanders. I've always been a fan for his career. 5.1 yards per carry, 5.3 in 2020, 5.5 in 2021. Last year, his first 1,000-yard season, 1,269 rushing yards. He caught 20 passes. When he broke into the league in 2019, he had 50 catches. He was one of 4 backs in 2019 in his rookie season to have 4.6 yards per carry, over 800 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards, and 50 grabs. I remember it. The other 3 running backs were Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Dalvin Cook. There's some pretty good company. Then in 2020, he was one of 3 running backs to have over 5 yards per carry and over 5 runs of 50 yards, over 5 touchdown runs over 50 yards. It was him, Nick Chubb, and Derrick Henry. But then the past 2 years, the Eagles got away from the receiving yard game. He only has 46 catches over the last 2 years. Now, I do believe he can catch. Now, Kenneth Gainwell is a really good pass catcher, Boston Scott as well. He may have this role. I think it's a pretty good 1-2 punch between him and Chuba Hubbard. But I think Sanders is going to be the lead. I think he's going to be a guy that really gets a bulk of the work, which just hasn't been the case for him over the course of his career. I could see him, being inside the top 10 in touches. I see him as the goal line back. I see him as a guy that could get back into the 30, 35 catch range. I don't think he's going to get back into the 50 catches that he had as a rookie, but I think he can certainly top the 20 that he had last year, and 11 rushing touchdowns for him in 2022 after 0 in 2021. Now, Carolina's not going to be a good team. They're not going to get a lot of touchdowns, but he's going to go probably low-end RB2, and I think he's going to be a decent RB2. I really do. I don't know if he's going to be as efficient because the offensive line in Carolina is not as good as it is in Philadelphia. I think Sanders has a hard time kind of like with the vision and seeing the holes, but I do believe he's a good running back. And I think, if you leave your draft with him as your RB2 or maybe your RB3, depending on how the community does feel about him, I think it'd be a pretty good get. We went on 22 minutes about running backs. Don't worry. We're going to keep the balance of this show. Not a lot of pass catchers to talk about, but we're going to bring them up here next on Mean Streets. Back in a couple.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
Welcome back in. NBA rigged in the house. I'm not saying that it's rigged, but NBA rigged, maybe saying that it's rigged. Chris, nice to see you, sir. How are you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the NBA being rigged. I think we have actually had that conversation before. Is it Patrick Ewing? Is it the Ewing draft? Is that why? I haven't seen this, I don't think, ever. It's March 16th. There's how many games left in the association in the NBA? What do we got? Let's look at the East. What are the Bucks? 50 and 19, 70 games here. So this is like 13, 12 games left. I've never seen this before, and I get it, but I've never seen a team be second in a conference this late in the season and be like 90-1 to win the NBA championship. I get it. I understand. The Sacramento Kings, they're playing good ball this year. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They had a hard-fought loss to the Bucks the other night. The Bucks beat them down the stretch, but it was a really good game. They kind of hung around. I do understand it. You have the Suns and the loaded Phoenix Suns squad, and Kevin Durant's hurt, but he's going to be back. You got the Nuggets playing really good, and then you have the Clippers, who I do believe are overrated. I think they're one of the most overrated franchises over the past couple of years. Have been one of the most overrated teams, I think, in the league. They really have been. They got really nice players. Yes, NBA against Knicks and Spike Lee. That's why I figured it might be. But yeah, you have these good teams in the West. So I totally understand it. Like, nobody's going to ever give the benefit of the doubt the Kings to beat the Nuggets or to beat the. I think they can beat the Grizzlies. And when's he going to come back? He's suspended for another 8 or 9 games, I believe. The Kings, are they going to beat the Suns? No. Would they beat the Clippers? I don't know. Maybe, probably not. I don't think anybody would give them credit, but I wouldn't be shocked. Again, the Clippers got some pieces there, but I just don't see the same Kawhi, same Paul George. Russ had a game, I think it was last night, no turnovers. He had a pretty good game. First game with the Clippers, no turnovers. But I think that they're just like a star-studded team that's like I just feel like they're overrated. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, have we ever seen this before from the Sacramento Kings? Like, this is crazy. I know I was going to just talk some football here, but I'll get to it in a second. I wanted to get you guys some live odds because I have not seen this before in my time, like, covering the sport. I tweeted the other day they were 90-1. Now they're 75-1. Bet Rivers has them at 40-1. Don't you guys think it's worth a little bit of a sprinkle? Like, I don't think anybody really buys that they're going to win, but at 75-1, like, put $1 on it. What's $1? It's like coffee. Like, instead of 2 coffees today, maybe just 1 coffee and $1 on the Sacramento Kings. Sabonis has been really nice this year. He's been fantastic. Got some really good players. They're 41-27. They've won 8 of their last 10. They're tied with the Grizzlies. They're 4.5 games back of the best team in the West. Light that purple bean. I got a purple Sacramento Kings jersey. It's a Chris Webber jersey from way back in the day. I used to collect basketball jerseys. I have a ton of them. Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that I haven't seen it. I get the odds. I understand why. Beam, yeah, I knew that's what you meant. But it's a little strange to me. I haven't seen it. I do have an NBA prop towards the end of the show, and it is a king. I could do it now, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to get into the wide receivers and some tight ends here on this list. Quan, if you could chuck this up for us. So Jacoby Myers, now a member of the Raiders, and JuJu Smith-Schuster, now a member of the Patriots. The exact same deal for Myers and JuJu. Very interesting that the Raiders or the Patriots decided to go with JuJu Smith-Schuster. I hear, but he's a slot wide receiver, and they needed a slot wide receiver. Jacoby Myers played in the slot too. He's one of 14 wide receivers over the last 2 seasons to have 1,000 yards in the slot and out wide. I think Jacoby Myers is a better wide receiver. I've never been a big JuJu fan. I've been labeled, Jake labels me as the JuJu hater. I had him over at The Athletic as a bust the year that Antonio Brown left. And you know what? That was a correct call. JuJu could not handle top coverage. He got a lot of soft coverage in his rookie season with Antonio Brown garnering a lot of the attention. JuJu is better suited in the slot. He played out wide that first year with Antonio Brown, and I just didn't think he handled top coverage. Now, I do believe TikTok Boy is a good wide receiver. I think he is solid. I wonder if it was in his contract. Like, listen, Bill Belichick says 1 TikTok per month, dude. You can't be doing TikToks all the time. I don't know if anybody saw the audio or heard the audio in practice this year where Andy Reid had said that JuJu puts more time and effort into his TikToks than his play on the practice field. It's very telling. Kind of shots fired there. Yeah, he's got some nice TikToks, but JuJu, I think he's been kind of underwhelming, from a fantasy aspect. But this is what Mac Jones and company needs. They need a solidified slot wide receiver. I'm not a huge believer in Mac Jones. I think he could be a little bit better than last year. But let's be honest about last year, right? When you bring in Matt Patricia to be the offensive coordinator or call plays, you're going to be a bloody mess. And that's what the Patriots were. They were a mess. So they bring in Bill O'Brien, who's obviously very familiar with the Pats and very familiar with Bill Belichick and company. I think he can improve Mac Jones's game. I think he can kind of get him going a little bit. So some stability for JuJu Smith-Schuster. I would project him for 80, 85 catches. I think he's got more value in a PPR setting, but I just thought it was very interesting to me. Like if I'm the Patriots, I would rather spend that money on Jakobi Meyers, the exact same money for Jakobi as JuJu. I tweeted that I got a little bit of pushback. Some people really are fans of JuJu Smith-Schuster, I guess, and not so much of Jakobi Meyers. 2 years ago, he had 2 touchdowns. He had 0 in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Now he didn't play a lot in 2019. I think he just had like a game or two. Actually, he played more games than that. Yeah, he played 15 games. I'm looking now. He 26 catches as a rookie. But the last few years have been really good. A lot of volume. 2021, 126 targets, 83 grabs, just the 2 touchdowns. I think he threw a touchdown that season. And then last season was a much better campaign from him, at least finding the end zone. He was 8.4 yards per target, an improvement from 6.9. He had 6 touchdowns. He had over 800 yards again. Fewer targets, 96 and 67 grabs, but he did miss a little bit of time. Kyler Murray-esque video game. Listen, Jakobi Meyers is a really good get for the Raiders. I don't think I'm going to be interested in him from a fantasy standpoint. I think the offense is slightly limited with Jimmy Garoppolo, even though he's going to know the system. But all of a sudden, you got a lot going on there. I think it's a good get because Jakobi can separate. You can put him in the slot like Adams. Adams is one of those 14 as well with 1,000 yards over the last 2 years in the slot and out wide. He just garners so much attention. Adams, I think he is actually the best wide receiver in football still to this date, not from fantasy, from a real life standpoint. He can create separation better than anybody, contested catches, but it will leave, some soft coverage, and he's a great route runner, Jakobi Meyers. So maybe in the middle of the field, I think he could be sneaky at times, but he won't really be on my radar from a fantasy standpoint. Also got Hunter Renfrow still in the squad. I mean, some rumors there about Philip Dorsett maybe. The other signings are just kind of low key. Johnny, our boy Johnny Smith, should be Jonnu. Again, that's my bad. George never makes mistakes. It's always me. Jonnu Smith traded to the Falcons. Interesting, right? Come on, you got a good guy there in Pettis. But anyways, Hayden Hurst, Panthers, Darren Waller, Giants, and those are the tight ends. That's the tight end movement. Now, there's still some other tight ends out there that are available via free agency, and they are up at the top. Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz is going to go somewhere, right? I mean, he's going to be a big loss for Dallas. Mike Gesicki, Austin Hooper, Foster Moreau. Right now, the Raiders don't have Pitts, not Pettis. I knew that's why I was tripping up. It's not Pettis. It's Kyle Pitts. My goodness. Anyways, I don't think Jonnu or Johnny is going to cut into Pitts, but interesting trade nonetheless. Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis apparently on the list. I knew Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to say anything besides just take shots at everybody else yesterday. Alan Lazard goes to the Jets as well. So there's still some tight ends that are available. We'll see what happens. There's also still some wide receivers available as well. Odell Beckham Jr., DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Jarvis Landry, to an extent. Paris Campbell I already mentioned. And there was another one, Marvin Jones, right, to an extent as well. Thank you for that list. There's still some decent guys that are out there, not big names, but we'll see where Odell Beckham Jr. goes. Adam Thielen, I think, could be a decent 3 for his squad. I don't know if that's in the slot for Dallas. Probably too rich for Philadelphia, but we'll see where he lines up and where he goes. I thought there were some rumors for Paris Campbell to the Raiders, and it would make sense, right? It would make sense on Paris Campbell because he's a former Patriot, and Josh McDaniels loves himself some former Patriots. We got a break. I went way too long again. We still have 3 more segments, and I got some hockey talk. I did already comment on Jamaal Williams and Kamara. I'm sorry. I would love to do it because you're hanging out with me live, but kind of already broke that down and I got a lot more to get to. So I don't know if you have some time maybe to go back and watch it. I do think he's going to be a pain in Kamara's butt. I think he's a good goal line back, led the NFL in red zone rushing attempts last season. Could be the goal line back there for Kamara, who also could miss some time to start the season for a suspension. So, Jamal's not going to be as good as last year, and he is going to cut into Kamara, and I don't view him as an RB1. That's really it. I mean, it could be Taysom Hill cutting into Kamara, right? That was pretty annoying last season, but that was really my take on all of it. I think it's a good real life move, good offensive line. I really like what the Saints got going on as well. They'll be a playoff team. I like them to win the division. We got a break, and we'll talk some NHL here next on Mean Streets. Keep her locked.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win.
Welcome back in. So a couple NHL segments here for you. Let's start with the point props. We'll get into the shot props in the next block here. Thank you, Quan. So Vladimir Tarasenko here up at the top. I got him for a point at -104. Now, he hasn't been fantastic of late. I mean, he picked up an assist in his last game, but I really like the line movement here. Patrick Kane's been really good, by the way. I do like him to hit the score sheet tonight. I think we'll see the over between the Rangers and the Penguins. I'm not a big believer in Pittsburgh. I like their top six. You know, Crosby's playing really good. He's top 10 in 5-on-5 points. You know, Zucker's been on a nice run. Gensel's starting to score again. Malkin, right? I do like their forwards. I like some of their defensemen. You know, Petrie and Letang are offensive-minded defensemen, but they're just not getting the goaltending. Like Jari the other night looked awful against the Canadians. I don't know which way they're going tonight. If it's Jari or if it's Casey DeSmith, I don't think it really matters. I like the over in this game. I think there'll be some offense, but I really like that Mika Zibanejad is back with Panarin and Tarasenko is on that line. So he only has 1 point in his last 5 games. But before that, he had a 3-game point streak, which he wrapped up 5 points and 2 goals. He had 6 shots the other night against the Penguins, played 15-22. Now, that was a 3-2 game, but it was very spirited. It was like a playoff atmosphere. This is going to be the second game here in like a few days these two teams have played, and they're also going to play again on Saturday. So it did have like a little bit of a playoff feel to it. I like Tarasenko up on that top line with Panarin and Mika Zibanejad. In fact, you could get all 3 of those guys to have a point over at Bet365, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Tarasenko at +260. And Kane has been really good. He's on that second line with Trocheck, and he is also with Chris Kreider. But I really do like that top line tonight. Not really feeling the vibe of the Penguins keeping the puck out of their net. Anthony Duclair here. Duclair only has 2 points in 6 games. He's only played 6 games this season. But I love the matchup against the Canadians. Leaky Canadians. They allowed 8 goals the other night to the Avs. They allowed 4 goals to the Pens. Now, they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 6-4, but that was all Jari just being awful. The guy outplayed significantly in Florida. Tough place to play. Duclair played 18 minutes in his last game, which is the most that he's played since he's been back in the lineup, and he played on that top line with Alexander Barkov. Barkov has a history of lighting up the Habs. So I like Duclair here for a point at -118. It's probably an assist. I think he's sneaky for a goal, but I'm going to take the point prop here at -118. How about Evgeny? We've been calling him Daddy Dadonov over in Dallas. This is another guy who moved away from Montreal, is surrounded around better players in Dallas, has just been a staple on that second line with Wyatt Johnson and Jamie Benn. This is a good spot here against the Oilers as well. I think we could see an up-tempo game, a lot of scoring here. Daddy has has 5 points in his last 4 games. Been really, really good here with the Dallas Stars, and he's +126 to pick up a point tonight. Nino Niederreiter, it's heat check time. I think we said this the last time that he played against the Hurricanes, his former squad. He picked up a point. He extended his point streak to 7 games. This is a guy that averaged under 16 minutes per game in his first 48 games with the Nashville Predators. He is playing on the top line in Winnipeg with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. He's on that top power play. Now, this is a really tough spot against the Boston Bruins, but let's keep in mind the Bruins have lost 2 straight, and those games were to Detroit and the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe they're hitting a little bit of a wall. Who knows? The Jets can score on that top power play, as I mentioned in the first line. Let's see what we can do here with Nito and ride this one out. He's only played 8 games with the Jets, and he's hit the score sheet in 7, as I mentioned, 7 straight. And then Evan Rodriguez, points in 4 of his last 7. We had him the other night against the Habs, which was a good spot. This one is a really good spot as well against the Ottawa Senators, who return home after a lengthy road trip where they didn't really look all that good. Defensively, they got some issues. They got some issues in goal, that's for sure. I like Colorado. I think we're getting good value on Colorado on the money line, despite playing on the road and playing last night in Toronto, a 2-1 victory they had against the Maple Leafs. We'll get to that Leafs question, I think, in the next block here. We're going to take a quick break. That's what I got for points. I got some shot props next here on Mean Streets. Here's some shot props. Probably my favorite shot prop of the day is Jared McCann of the Seattle Kraken. I'm actually surprised we're getting this at plus 100. I actually think it's plus 110 in some spots. So double check prop shop. You can just save yourself a lot of time and a lot of cash here. But Jared McCann, I'm surprised again. This is a good matchup against the San Jose Sharks. They're among the leaders in allowing shot attempts and shots, especially after they've traded a lot of their good players away and just brought in some of their kids. Jared McCann has cleared in 6 of his last 7 games, and 5 and actually, sorry, he's cleared in 6 of his last 7 games, 5 shots in his last game. He had, I think, 7 shots the other day. Come on, Meaney, figure it out here. 5 shots in his last game, 6 shots against the Senators. He had 6 shots against a tough Avs team. So he has been clearing pretty consistently. 2.5. I really like it. Brad Marchand's been shooting lately. He's got 10 shots on goal in his last 2 games. It's a decent matchup against the Winnipeg Jets, but it's a really good price, I think, for Brad Marchand. That's why I'm intrigued with it at minus 114. Patrick Laine has been really juiced over the past couple of days, but a tougher spot against LA. But I can't ignore this guy. He's got goals in 4 of his last 5 games. In his last 4 games, 6 shots, 4, 4, and 4. Really like Boone Jenner and Victor Arvidsson inside that same game as well. You guys know how I feel about Rupe Hintz. In fact, Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson are both plus money. Rupe Hintz is at 2.5 and Jason Robertson's at 3.5. I'm going with Rupe Hintz here, but I think they're both very much in play. And then Ty Radish. Ty Radish had a pretty good spot, over 1.5 shots at Bet Rivers at minus 134. He had a hat trick the other night. He has 6 goals in his last 4 games. I think he's a sneaky little goal scorer again tonight. He's just red hot. He's getting an opportunity to play in Chicago. Trading Patrick Kane and trading everybody away over the past couple of years. And also Jonathan Taves not playing. So 6 goals in his last 4. I think he's plus 310 to score a goal here tonight. 2+ shots in 6 of his last 7 games. And some big shooting performances too. It's not just like, oh, he got 2, 4, 3, 5, and 3 as well. Ty Radish, have him on your list for over 1.5 shots. I think Dennis Gurianov is a good one at 1.5 as well. One more break here on Mean Street's going to get to that question from NBA Rigged. And I do have an NBA prop for you to round out the show. Keep her locked.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN data.
My NBA prop is Kevin Huerter of the Sacramento Kings. That's right. We've been talking a lot about the Kings here today. Over 2.5 threes, minus 105 over at BetMGM. 12 threes in his last 2 games. He's cleared this number in 5 of his last 7. 41% from 3 is what he's shooting. A career season for him, no doubt, this year. And that is a career high mark for him, 41% from beyond the arc. 2.8 threes per game, 6.8 attempts per game. That's what it is for me when I attack these 3-point props. It really is about the volume and the shot attempts as well from 3. So 18 shot attempts from beyond the arc over his last just 2 games, 4 for 7 and 8 for 11 in a couple games, 6 for 10, 6 for 9. I don't mind the matchup against Brooklyn as well, so I do like the over there. Unfortunately, NBA rigged, we do have to get out of here. A lot of March Madness talk from the last 2 episodes if you want to go back and check that out. Don't think the Sabres make the playoffs. They don't have the goaltending to get it done. That's what I would like to see, and I don't know, man. It's hard to give the benefit of doubt to the Leafs. I think they get by the Lightning, but that's it. That's kind of where I draw the line with Toronto. But I do like some of the additions. Ryan O'Reilly, playoff experience. They got tougher to play against in Achari and Lafferty, and some defensemen that they brought into, Shen and McCabe. They got tougher to play against, but I still think this team is very, very fragile. I wouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt to beat a Bruins team, but I think they could get by the Lightning. We're out of here. Enjoy the madness. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.